who is deaf, genderqueer, transmasculine, Chinese, and Jewish. He has given talks all over the country on the intersections of art, disability, queerness, race, and he has been inspiring us since he launched his YouTube channel back in May 2017. He has participated in numerous gallery shows and artist residencies internationally, worked as a columnist for Condé Nast's first queer publication, Them, launched a radically inclusive clothing line in collaboration with Opening Ceremony, signed as the first deaf and transmasculine model with IMG Models, and was cast as a superhero within Warner Brothers' DC Universe Titans. Through Chella's work as a deaf genderqueer artist, author, and activist, he is a leading example of these values and creating solutions for social injustice around the world. Chella, I am so honored to award you with the Renaissance Awards Digital Creator Award. It is really affirming and uplifting, inspiring, so grounding, faith rejuvenating, and to see someone like you use what you have to further our future collectively. Eco Age will be foregoing the usual statuette and are thrilled to award you, Chella, with a one-of-a-kind NFT designed with and donated by strategic partner Method. This NFT award is the first in history and is a huge leap forward in technology. You've been so strong and you've been so open, Chella, and strong in showing vulnerability about the complexities of your identity and your transition journey. So I wanted to ask, why did you feel it was so important to share these very intimate moments in your life in such a transparent way?
That's a great question. I owe so much to social media and the internet, honestly. Growing up in a small town in central Pennsylvania, the way that I was able to find representation because it wasn't tangible was through the internet and through social media. So there were just rabbit holes that I would go down on my phone at night, exploring what it means to be trans, what it means to be disabled, what it means to be a person of color. And I could do all of this anonymously within the privacy of my own bedroom. And that was so beautiful because it was a tool that I could use at a time when I was not ready to be out so publicly. So when I finally was able to make all those connections and I felt comfortable enough and confident enough within myself to be able to share that with the world, I was like, how could I not? How could I not give back to the same communities that have helped me so much without seeing all of these different things online, even though most of these people have no idea, the impact that they're making because they don't see the effects because it's all virtual. I wanted to be able to have faith in the idea that it would be representation for someone, but then again, it was also representation for myself because, as you know, my identities are quite niche. So I wanted to see that, I wanted to see that represented. I wanted people who have the same identities as me to feel like they have a home, not in just many different communities, but in one place. It's possible. And to this day, actually, I've had the huge privilege and honor of meeting one person who has all the same identities as me, and they're 11 years old. Yeah, I never thought it would happen. They're 11 years old, and they live in New York, and I wouldn't have ever connected with them otherwise. So I'm just so grateful for the internet and the tools that it's allowed. So my answer is kind of, I guess, because I'm privileged enough to be able to do it comfortably and feel safe, how could I not?
That's so important, especially like for those of us who have experiences that are just really rare. Like trans people are a demographic in general that is already really rare, like in the population. And not only are we vulnerable, but we don't show up in many. And so then for someone who has those very unique intersections that you share with them, like I can imagine how affirmed they're gonna feel, and that especially as they grow up and start to see and meet and connect with different people, they're gonna know that there's a place for them in the world because you showed them that.
I was thinking about you when you were talking, like, so many people watching Pose and like watching your upcoming projects and everything. Like, you are that for so many people as well. If I had seen Pose when I was in elementary school, I would have connected the dots so much more quickly and probably found so much self-empowerment at a younger age. So, I mean, yeah, I appreciate you so much, and I'm so grateful for you. Just we're all out here doing it, and I'm just so excited.
So I wanted to know about a little more about what inclusivity and accessibility means to you, especially as somebody who you won't see too much of yourself being included in many things. You are a first for so many of the spaces that you step into. So what does that mean to you, for accessibility and inclusivity to both be so interwoven in your experiences, and how important it is to have that? What does it mean to you?
What does it mean to me? That's such a general question, but for me, I think the answer is constantly evolving and changing because it's about balance. And balance means that there is this fluidity that always is happening. And at first, it meant not compromising my identity for anyone. And that meant fighting with so much fire, right? And so much energy, to a point where I realized I was actually so depleted and so exhausted. And sometimes it was getting change to happen, and sometimes that is the way to fight. But what I realized since is that it's more of a balance. Inclusivity and accessibility, it's more of a balance, that sometimes you need to make compromises, and that was the hardest pill that I have ever had to swallow. But sometimes those compromises actually benefit you. So in some moments, if they're very small, I will just accept the situation at times for how it is, to preserve my own energy. And then I have realized that's a form of self-care. So to me, inclusivity and accessibility is about not compromising your identity, but it's also about the balance between that and caring for yourself and understanding how much energy you have and at what times, and when is the right time to use that energy and to educate. Because it's not always on you to educate. Sometimes you can take a break and you can breathe and you can just be. And that's what I've been learning recently about inclusivity and accessibility. But inevitably, it's always to striving towards that beautiful utopia of a place where we are all accepted, we are all seen for all of the different layers we have, we are all accommodated. But understanding that that takes time, and it depends on who's ready to hear it, and so many other variables. But that's one aspect I feel like I could talk about for a long time. I'm curious, can I flip the question? Because I'm curious about your answer.
Oh, I mean, I was just thinking about, I was literally just gonna respond to that, like, with, it just made me think about how, like, if it's not inclusive, it's not accessible. Like, and so, like, it's the ways that accessibility and inclusivity are, like, inextricably linked.
Inextricable?
I hate that word, but they're just linked. Like, they just are. So whatever, they just are linked. So if it's not inclusive, like, it's just not accessible, right? And I think, like, the point of accessibility, I was thinking, was for something to be accessible to everybody. Like, if it's not accessible if everybody can't access it. So, like, I was just thinking about how, like, that's what inclusivity means to me. It's for everything for everything to be accessible. Everything that anything has, everything anyone has access to, it should be accessible to everyone, and if it is, then it's inclusive, you know. And so like I mean I feel like my issues with accessibility, I think that we intersect in our experiences around it, but then you also have an experience that I don't, you know, when it comes to accessibility, like accessing information in other ways that aren't audio, like is it like for people to also have that option available, is or like for people to know sign language, for that to be like accessible in communication when information is being exchanged. Like a lot of the spaces that I navigate don't 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 really, I mean, like outside of the areas and spaces where things are labeled with letters, I just don't see like I don't really see support for people who are, you know, who are deaf, and people who are wheelchair users. I have a friend named Jillian. I think about her often, especially when I'm navigating different spaces that don't have stairs. I'm like, damn, how would my friend Jillian navigate this space with me if she was with me? And I think about that often, because when we're spending time together and we want to go different places that we're just generally interested in, like how we experience that space is often split by how accommodating they are to her and her experience. And I'm often frustrated with not seeing the different ways that people who I love aren't thought, you know, like can't access the same things that I enjoy, you know, or that, you know, like things that they may enjoy will be harder for them to access just because of the issue of inclusivity, the issue of accessibility. But I think also about accessibility in terms of love. You know, like I think about like how difficult it is for trans femmes, particularly in love, or like trans people, particularly in love, and particularly in other spaces where we're not allowed to be, but especially around like love in general. Love is so inaccessible for trans people in this world. Not, and I don't mean that romantically. I mean that generally also. Like it's actually really difficult. And so when you were talking about your experience, I was thinking about the areas of accessibility that I feel are most difficult for me to access in ways that are really healthy for me. And I find that it happens to be love. You know, like I've gotten myself into so much trouble trying to be loved, and like it's just really difficult and really sad how much I think trans people are harmed and experience harm in the pursuit of love. And you know, like it's like that's one thing I think of in terms of accessibility. um you know, because it's a thing that we all would assume we all have access to, but we, you know, we don't. And so I think like that absence of accessibility is one of the things that is the cause for the biggest plague, for the most like the largest plagues of violence that trans people experience. It's the absence of love, the absence of that accessibility for it. And yeah, you know, that's how I would answer the question. That's how I
Yeah, that was beautiful and well said and articulate. And I resonate very deeply with the absence of love in many different ways. I feel like I've actually been thinking about that a lot recently in terms of society. But I want you to know that I love you and I appreciate you. And I mean, there was just, I even remember like the moment that we met. I don't know if you remember, but it was that trans protest at Washington Square Park. And you were,
Oh yeah,
that was like a wild day. But I just remember you went
that was
up.
so intense.
It was so intense. It was such a, anyway, you were like giving this speech and just saying things just like you are now that I just deeply resonated with, that I used to believe before were so niche that no one else would understand, but you were just like speaking and it was just like pouring out of you, and I felt so much love then. And I think there's so much, there is such an abundance of love is what I'm saying. And I used to believe that the world only held scarcity, but I think moments like that and moments like right now remind me how much love there is, and you just have to find the people who understand. And I know that is sometimes easier said than done, but it's so possible and beautiful. And I'm just grateful to be able to like have these conversations and to know you and to be, yeah, yes, that is all.
Stop.
It's so
I
true.
appreciate so much. You're right.
That's really beautiful. Yeah. Um, it's really challenging to not think in terms of scarcity, and to not experience life in those ways. Like, you know, it's so complicated. Like some of us have more in different areas, more in abundance in other areas than others, and in other areas than others. Um, but it's really, I've always, when people have pushed back against my analysis of the availability of love for trans people in the world, whenever people push back against it and tell me, oh, there's a scarcity mindset, we have to get out of that, I am both inspired by that and offended all the time. Every time, like when you said it, I felt inspired and offended because I'm like, it's so not offended, but I think that's the wrong word. But it's so faith rejuvenating, to be told that we have, all we have to do is move out of the mindset of scarcity. But so often, like, that's just not our decision, like, it's just not up to us to decide, like, the world, is still moving, is still struggling with the ways that they're moving out of how they see us as peculiar. And also the mistakes we get to make, also like just all of like, there's so much of our humanity that is like, it's like under a microscope when it comes to trans people. It's like magnified, and we're like, so much of our wholeness is left out because of how we're like peered at so up close and dissected the way that we are. And so like we never get to be seen for all of who we are and all of our humanity and all of our dimensions and all of our complexity, or even if we are less complex, than other people. We just, our wholeness is, I think, what is so often disregarded and not fully acknowledged. And I think like that is linked to how much love we get to have, because how much love a person gets to have is always linked to how much the person who wants to love them or is in front of them is willing to see them. And so it's like, it's really difficult because some days, some people may be in a better mood and more open to being curious and learning. Other days, folks may not. But I feel like I'm taking. This is why you can't ask me questions.
No, oh my God, no, this is so interesting. This is why I feel like we need to. I have so much to say about that, though. I just want to say really quickly that I feel that so deeply, and I appreciate you saying it. And I think something I've had to realize for myself is there's layers, there's different perspectives. There's that perspective where, yes, all anyone ever perceives of us is token. Bless you. Um, all anyone ever perceives of us is
Bless
tokenization.
you.
That's my sister. All anyone ever perceives of us is tokenization. And for a while, I felt myself drowning in that ideology that no one would ever see me past those labels. No one would ever see me past deaf, trans, Jewish, and all these things that are so beautiful but limiting. And I've realized when I talk about the abundance of love, it's not. The truth is, it is not possible everywhere as of now, unfortunately, but it is possible with people and in moments, like in this moment. Like, I know that when I talk to you, I know you see me. And when I talk to my sister, I know she sees me. And there's certain people where that abundance is possible, and that is the world that I lean into, and that's the world that keeps me going in external spaces that aren't that way. And so there are two realities, or no, there are infinite realities, but reminding myself that this reality is one that we do have, that is real, that is essentially like sustainable activism, but also just like self-care, as a reminder. And I hope that you like remind yourself of that reality, because we can't forget about it. We can't keep going if we forget about that part. But yes.
Do you think that each and every single person on this planet has the capacity to change the entire world?
The entire world.
If we wanted to.
I think it depends on their definition of the world and of change. But I do believe everyone, and to that regard, in my definition, because I just mentioned the multiple and infinite realities that we have, I think it's absolutely possible to change the world. But I think our views of what the world is often differentiate from one another. So, yes and no.
I remember I was having a conversation with my friend Maddox, and he's also a trans masculine person that I love deeply. He's also my best friend. He said we always talk about the change that we want to see in the world and the future that we imagine, and the liberation that we want to have. Like we have these conversations often, all the time, and they're always a little different every time because we're always learning. And so I think what I always go back to in my mind whenever people talk about changing the world, I always think about there's this idea of a protopia. This was a thing that this is a conversation that he listened to before or was a part of, and he brought it to me. And so he shared with me like the difference, like there's dystopia, there's utopia, there's protopia. So this dystopian world is supposed to be one where the worst possible things that we could have done to ourselves and each other are a reality, a worldwide reality. Or like utopia is like the best possible outcomes, are like now a reality. And so for him, he thought that a protopia was more accurate and more accessible, because how are we going to access a utopia from here, right? From where we are now. And so he told me, and this relates to everything else, and it reminded me of when you talked about how it's relative, what it means to change the world, and someone's ability to change it, how all those things are relative, reminded me of this idea of the protopia, because protopia is is a reality, is basically like the future that you want, it's as simple as you just working toward it in the present now. So like if you imagine like any kind of future, you just do what you imagine in that future actively in your life. And so it was just really cool, because it's like, yeah, change the world to whose standard, to whose desire, you know. And then like, but it's like it's really important that you named that this is a relative thing. And it also just makes me think about how much power and control we have over ourselves, and how like the you know the impact that we want to have on like other people, the impact that we have on other people in our life every day is a vibration we make out into the world, you know. and and so like it just makes me think about that, like how it's like and it's like also really humble that you said that, because anybody could say everybody needs to X, Y, and Z. But literally, that is what political wars are made of. That is what religious conflict is made of. That is what, like, so much of so that's what so much conflict around what you believe is best for us and what I believe is best for us is made out of. What people think is best for each other. And that's the problem. Like, you know what I mean? I mean, that's what I think about often as being a potential cause for so much strife, is like how we are always constantly trying to decide for other people what's best, you know, for them, you know, whether it's the Christians or whether it's, you know, the Republicans or the Democrats, or, you know, it's just, that's what it is. Everyone is obsessed with creating a universal reality out of what they think is right or best. And so like, yeah.
It's so conflicting. I feel everything that you said, I keep saying I just like resonate with everything that you say. But that idea of a protopia, is that correct? Protopia?
Protopia, yeah.
Protopia. I love that because I've been thinking more and more about the present moment and how if we just think about this present moment and what we can change in it to accommodate ourselves, what can be more inclusive and accessible for ourselves in this present moment. Because as you just referred to as well, everyone's accessibility and inclusivity definitions are different, and they're just sometimes contradictory. Like sometimes even people's what's accommodating to one disability contradicts the other disability. So it's just about being in the moment for yourself and just like caring for yourself and checking in, what do you need in this moment and what would make this world your protopia or utopia in this moment. And just like letting go of the future a little bit, not all the time, but sometimes is necessary so that you can at least allow yourself to like heal and just be in the moment and satisfy all your needs.
Yeah, I feel like we kind of lose control of our present when we are too focused on the future. Like it's like driving in a car and looking behind you, or you know, it's like if your attention isn't what's in front of you, then you will inevitably meet your demise, you know? And so that's the best way, I think, like in a lot of ways, to protect our future is to be really mindful of our present, like you said.
Exactly.
So
we could talk about this. We could talk about this all day.
No, but this is it right here.
Yeah.
This is the perfect space.
It's true. I mean, I was thinking actually about like the industry that we are both in. So often the question is what's next, right? What's coming? What do you have next? And I've just like growing up after like being 17 and entering this industry, and you were also very young as well, and like being told that and ask that constantly, I think it definitely takes away from the present. And I've been finding my way back to just this moment. And it's so refreshing and
Yeah.
fulfilling, you know? It's just a good reminder for accessibility and inclusive reasons, but also just like as a human being to just be in this moment and not be wondering about what's next or having to answer those questions.
That's so real. I think, yeah, like those expectations are really anxiety inducing for me because I feel like what's next is may not be for public consumption. You know, like my what's next may not be something that you can like on an Instagram post or purchase online or buy it in a movie theater. And so when those projections, I think, excuse me, when those expectations are projected on people who have celebrity or have a particular public notoriety for their art, it's confusing and it's overwhelming and it makes me feel that I am a buffet. You know, like it makes me feel like, you know, it's like, okay, so today's gonna be my left hit. Okay, here you go. Okay, so tomorrow is my right pinky finger. Okay, here you go. You know, and it's like,
Literally.
you know, and
Yeah.
I think like it does us all a service for people who have a particular level of visibility to be like, no, actually I'm off today. I'm off for the next month in public visibility things. And honestly, it serves everyone else because all of the algorithms and the things that everyone is being triggered by seeing on Instagram when it comes to the over accentualization of beauty in a way that makes other people feel bad, or like the over centering of superficial values and things that aren't sustainable for the human spirit. Like all of that is actually spawned by celebrity culture. And what celebrities are putting on the internet, what people who are public figures are sharing online, literally creates a standard of living and life for everyone else. Because we go on the internet to connect about life, to share, to learn, to be inspired, right? And a lot of us are being inspired by really toxic shit, really harmful standards that are not accessible and that make us believe that our value is based on our ability to achieve that thing that is actually impossible. And so when we don't take space, I feel like I think about this all the time, like when I don't take space away from the online things and the visibility things or the what's next in your career things, I get sick. I lose myself in everything else everybody wants for me or thinks that I should have or be doing. And it becomes toxic because you may feel that I should be on this movie or on this catalog or that catalog, and that may not actually be happening for me. But when I'm seeing it happening for other people now on the internet, I'm feeling OD FOMO. But like FOMO, feelings of what is it? Is it FOMO?
Like the feeling of missing out.
Feeling of missing out. I feel it's like the feeling of missing out is amplified in such a way that I'm like, I'm not the artist I'm supposed to be. I'm not doing my job, I'm not doing my work. I'm supposed to be climbing to what? What is this ladder? What are we climbing? What are we even conceptualizing as going higher, right? Like, why is that a going higher? You know, even like, how are we defining all of these things? So like, it's that projection of what's next that will that will mess you up.
I so agree. I agree with every single word. I mean, I have realized there's two journeys, right? There's this external journey that we have to an extent, participate in, because capitalism is a thing. We are often asked to make things as if we are robots off of human experiences, and that they aren't validated or real until we share them or put them out in the world. But then there is also this journey that is internal, right? And that's the journey that actually matters, the journey of just being able to be present and experience life and be completely fulfilled in this moment with what you have, because that's all you're ever gonna get. I mean, everything else is just a lot of many different things. But you know, what's most important is the present moment and just what you have, being okay with what you have, because again, what you said, what are we striving towards?
What is your method of change?
There's so many different methods depending on the timeline of change, and also change in respect to who. So for me, I mean, I think change is about acceptance, because it's always happening. There's never a moment that things are not changing, all the time. And I've had to just radically accept all change, even when it's change that I would not necessarily like to happen. But in terms of the outside world, I think it's a large part of the acceptance has been that things move slow, a lot slower than I wish they would. And it's ironic, because I feel like we're in this day and age where we're being told that so much change is happening at a pace that it's never happened before, because of like technological advancement and visibility of like various marginalized groups. But I'm still like, we're not there yet, you know? But then it goes back to our conversation before, where I'm like, but we are in a way, because this is a moment, this moment right here, I feel so appreciated and understood and present. And the world that I'm striving towards exists in this moment. And I'm accepting that, and that's change that feels so good, you know? So it depends. I mean, my method of change is largely relative to acceptance.
Chella, I am so honored to award you with the Renaissance Awards Digital Creator Award. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so honored that you're the one giving it to me. I feel like you are almost like a piece of me. We've had so many like intersecting experiences of our lives, and I feel like I'm talking to almost like a version of myself when I chat with you. So I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful for you and for everyone in, you know, the queer, disabled, BIPOC communities, for my family, who are largely the reason that I believe I'm still sitting here. You know, I'm grateful for the kid that was inside of me growing up, who persisted and could feel the inequities of the world and knew that he had to do something about it eventually. I think that his passion is largely what still fuels me to this day, leaning into that, being in touch with him, like the deepest part of myself. And I'm so grateful, of course, for Eco Age, for recognizing me and also just deeming me worthy of such an award, and for allowing Indya and I to come together and have this cathartic chat. I will reflect on this moment. I will appreciate this moment, and I'm so happy it was recorded, and I'm glad that it will be available and accessible to anyone who wants to watch, but also understanding that this present moment, like us being here together, everything that we said was for this moment, you know? I'm glad it was recorded, but it also wasn't for the intention of being shared that way, and I think that makes it all the more special. But thank you for this award. Thank you, Indya. Thank you, Eco Age.